Well, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Bitcoin today. Hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and let's get into it, my friends. We're going to start out on the 1 hour chart, and then we're going to bump it out into the 4 hour, the daily, weekly, and maybe end the video with that, right? So if that sounds good to you, hit the like button, subscribe. Let's get into it. $97,900 right now is the current price. Looking at the RSI, you can see that we've got 3 peaks here, right? 1, 2, 3. I wonder if we have any more going back. Not really, right? And I mean, relatively speaking, looking at the 1 hour time frame here, within the time that these 3 peaks have taken place, it seems as though the price has taken on a different kind of trend than it did before we saw this trend in the RSI and in the price, right? So I'm assuming after this peak here, which is roughly in the same area as this peak and this peak here, we pulled back, and then on this next peak here, we stalled. We kind of moved sideways, but then inevitably pulled back. Not as intense, but we still pulled back. I would assume, and we kind of already have begun pulling back. I don't think that it ends here, but I do think we can determine where it does end, right? If we analyze where it ended the last 2 times, perhaps, right? So here, this low came in right at the previous areas of resistance where you consolidated before you moved up. That was where that low was. The next low here in this range was all the way at the top. Again, previous areas of resistance here, previous areas of resistance there. This is actually really good market support, you guys, or structural support. Market structure, that's the word I was looking for. There we go. From this low already, we have found support right at the high. However, I do think that we're going to go lower because as well, if you look at the RSI, all times that we've hit these peaks, we have gone below the 50, right? Once, twice, maybe a third time here. It's possible that this attempt, you don't go below the 50. But either way, you still do likely go lower, right? I would expect, especially because you found support right there at the 40, right above the 40 here, I would think you probably go somewhere around the 40. So if you're not going to find support at your previous high like you did here, like you did there, where might you go? Well, maybe instead of the wicking high, maybe you go down to the closing high, which is at about 97.2K. We're at 97.9. The low that we have at the moment is at 97.7. That's not big numbers that we're dealing with, right? These are very small time frame numbers, and the reason why we're addressing that is because we are on the 1 hour time frame, and it is the weekend, right? The weekend, generally speaking, is a kind of boring time for crypto, for Bitcoin as a whole, because markets around the world aren't open, right? People who have access to a lot of money, they tend to move it around during business hours, which is not during the weekend, right? So days like this, Saturday, which it is the very beginning of Saturday right now, and Sunday, tomorrow, we can see a little bit of stagnation, right? Or just very simple, kind of not big significant moves. So we are at an area here in this overall range. If we put a line right there at that high, we're at an area that we found resistance before. Right, we found resistance here, we found resistance here, we found some support right here, we found some support right here, we found some resistance there and resistance there. We found a lot of significance throughout this whole kind of consolidation phase right at the point that we topped here. We could go a little bit higher. One could make the argument that we could go a little bit higher, but I doubt we break 100K by the end of this weekend. That's probably going to be for next week. And essentially that's the main essence of this video, is that today, whether we move up or down, it's probably not going to be too significant. At the moment, the 1 hour actually kind of would suggest that we move down, we correct, but not too far, right? I would think probably down to about 97.1K, 97.2K. You're at 97.9 now, and that probably takes some time. It probably doesn't just happen in an hour, but I bet it doesn't take all day to do that. So maybe 8 hours to do or so, something like that. And then we spend the next 8 hours or so recovering and coming back up, right? Because just because we find our low, I mean, I guess here we did actually start to move up relatively immediately, didn't we? But that doesn't mean that you're above new highs relatively immediately, right? You could still spend a day trying to retrace what you did on the way down. All I'm trying to say is I think today, Saturday, if it were to close green, likely we move down first, then we come back up to end the day. Maybe we close red, but with like a little bit of a wick, I don't know, something like that. And then Sunday, I would expect we could have a green day, or again, just kind of a nothing day there. If we're looking at the 4 hour time frame, taking out the 1 hour, now we're looking at the 4 hour. We look at the RSI here, you can see that you are finding resistance, a little bit of a double top at the overbought zone. It's not normally good to reject the overbought zone like this, but it is good. It is good to reject the overbought zone and then find support on the 60. That's really good. It's not good to take a really good situation like this, like a pretty phenomenal, very exceptional situation where you literally reject the overbought zone and bounce off the 60. that is a cause for celebration almost always. And you didn't celebrate. You got into the overbought zone and then out of it immediately. That tells me, if you're hesitating during a moment like this, that tells me that likely you probably do continue to pull back a little bit, and that's okay, right? You're at 97.9 now, going down to 97.2, even lower than that is totally fine. Looking at this 4 hour though, I mean, you don't respect the hell out of this green line, this 123 green line, right? But you do find support around it. Sometimes you respect it better than others. I'm just saying that right now because you're at it right now, finding support. You can go a little bit below it though, and I bet you do go below it. The 4 hour, this just doesn't look good. But I will say, if by the time you watch this video and this 4 hour candle here, which is the second candle of the day, right? It started at the 4th hour of the day, the second candle here. If this one's red by the next 3 hours and 36, or sorry, not red, green. If it's green in the next 3 hours and 36 minutes, then likely what you've done is you actually have gotten back into the overbought zone, and then this rejection and then another attempt and a waste of a good situation. It wasn't actually a waste at all. It might be being capitalized on, and then maybe what I'm saying throughout this whole video so far is wrong. Maybe Saturday and Sunday are really good days, because if you were to move up from here, if you were to get back in the overbought zone and stay in the overbought zone on the RSI on the 4 hour, likely you would move higher. If you move higher, you're breaking out of these previous areas of resistance here and here, breaking out of this overall kind of consolidation phase that you have right here, right? If you were to move higher from here right now. And if that was the case, likely this weekend would actually be good. You would probably close the week above 100K. But again, I'm not expecting that based off the 1 hour and even based off the 4 hour time frame. Again, the only way that I would kind of redact that or be open to its change is if this 4 hour candle closes green. If you can pull it back up and close green, especially if you can close above this 4 hour candle. It doesn't have to be this time right now. It doesn't have to be right now that you close above this candle. But anytime today, if you were to close above that candle, likely I'm wrong. You're not moving down to 97.2K or lower, and you're just moving up from here. So kind of a bit of a guess there, but my assumption would be that we do move down. We're at previous areas of resistance. Moving down to 97.2 is not a lot to ask for, and we could even move down lower than that. From a relative low to a relative high, you know, the 382, which is a pretty standard area to pull back to, and it seems that also seems to be a nice area of previous resistance and support, right? That's the 382 on this fib. We delete it. We can see resistance here, support there, a little bit of support in this area as well. Closing support, closing resistance. Wicked it for support there. So 96K as well, kind of a nice little psychological number. 96K. It's not the most psychological number of relevance, but the 382 right there, 96K right there, previous areas of support, nonetheless in this range. A higher low, I could see that happening. So as of right now, we're at 97.8K. The lowest that I would project us down to would be right below 96K, probably, if not by the end of this weekend, maybe by the very beginning of next week, like Monday or Tuesday. But I do suspect next week to close very, very positive. I think next week will be above 100K predominantly, right? And we potentially could even see new all-time highs next week for Bitcoin. If it's not next week, then I very much would suspect the following week. And I'm not expecting next week necessarily to be above all-time highs, just it could be by the end of the week. But if not next week, the week after. I definitely suspect the week after will bring it. But the lowest that I would give it from here would truthfully be about 96K, just below 96K. If we were to drop all the way down to 94K, even down to about 93.5K, that's fine. As long as we're forming higher lows, I suppose it's fine overall. But 96K would be nice to hold, or thereabouts. And then once we hold it, whether we go down there today, whether we take today, tomorrow, and then on Monday we're down there, however it looks, whatever it is, whenever we go down there, we need to get above this high. We need to get above this high. We need to break out of this overall range that we're in here, right? After we find support here. If we can't do that, well, like if we find a lower high or we find resistance in this area again, the next time we come to this line, likely we break below it, right? And then that would make us come down to this area of support, that we've been testing for quite some time. And the more times that we test it, the more likely we're going to break that as well. So I want to offer this one last perspective, and then we'll end the video. Okay, the daily RSI, talking about the downside as well, has this downtrend, right? Well-established downtrend. Lower lows here, lower highs here as well. Kind of, let's see. something like that. This one's kind of an outlier, but I want to draw it parallel, and I feel like that looks like the right shape. You can see what I'm doing, right? These aren't straight lines. These are squiggly lines. I'm doing my best, but you can kind of see the shape I'm going for. To me, it would seem as though we're at the top of this channel or very near it. So there is an argument to be made, not only that we go lower from here, but that we could just go lower, like break out of this range as a whole. If this wasn't Bitcoin, if I was just looking at a random, if you said, look at this RSI and tell me what you think, I would say you've got some good things going for you and you've got some bad things, and I'd want to see the price. This is what I would say, right? I would say, I would literally just looking at the RSI be like, you need to get above the 60, okay, which would then break you out of this trend, which is nice. Okay, you need to break above the 60, get out of that trend. You need to not go below the 40. And then also what would be nice is if this price right now is higher than this price. If it's not, I would be worried. And then we look at the price here and it's not, so a little bit worried, right? Worried. If you got a higher high here in your RSI but a lower high there, that's hidden bearish divergence. That could, doesn't mean it will, but it could indicate lower lows, continuation. Hidden divergences are not as strong as regular divergences, but they still are a signal that you might cool off or you might, reject. Not only that, but you're at previous areas of support on your RSI here. I drew that line a little bit to the downside. I meant to draw it like pretty flat, right, like that. Support here, support there, even support in this area over here, right? So finding resistance here could be the case. What you really don't want to do is go below the 40. You'd want to at least find support there. What you don't want, and ideally too, if you could find support on the 50, that's nice as well, right? It seems that you found support on the 50 here before, so even if you go a little bit below it, that's fine, right? Found it right on it there, resistance right on it there. So that 50 area is definitely a nice area. You don't have to go all the way to the 40, but really what you don't want to see is something below the 40, because if you see something below the 40, likely you're continuing this downtrend, and if you're continuing this downtrend, you're going to go to the oversold zone. And if you go to the oversold zone, you are absolutely breaking out of this. And then all the people who are new at doing technical analysis, who are calling this a head and shoulders pattern, they're going to be right. And all the people like me who have been doing who've been doing technical analysis for almost a decade, we're going to get proven wrong by all the new people, and we just can't have that. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully, I mean, we probably do move down, but hopefully it's not too intense. And hopefully by the beginning of next week, or sometime maybe even by the end of this week, over the next 2 days, we break out of this range and we get really above the 60. That's the thing to take away. We need to get above the 60 on the RSI. We need to get above these highs here in this range. So really on the RSI, it's above the 60. On the price, surprise, surprise, it's 100K. We need to get back into that 100K range. And if we can get both of those things in culmination with each other, I think that there's nothing that's going to stop us up until like 130K and beyond. So that's all I got. If you guys liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.